Welcome, everyone. I'm going to get us going here today. Appreciate everyone joining and our presenters for taking some time with us today. So we are Power Hug. We are a Power Platform community user group for the healthcare industry. We are here for all admins, makers, users to learn from one another, and as well as learn from Microsoft, which today is going to be the case. You can use the links on the side there to access previous sessions on YouTube, to join our community forum on LinkedIn. QR code will take you to the LinkedIn post as well. And we do have a link there for feedback if anybody has any thoughts or ideas that they would like to share with the group. We are here the fourth Thursday each month. That's a rule of thumb more than a hard and fast rule. As you can see, we've moved it out this week because of Microsoft Build, and we'll move it around for holidays and things of that nature. But generally speaking, fourth Thursday of every month, around the lunch hour. We're here to cover all things Power Platform: governance, user adoption, ROI, case studies, citizen development, strategy, alignment, lessons learned. We've had a variety of different customers across the health and life sciences spectrum present for us here, talking about their journeys. And we've had a few different resources from Microsoft come along as well, today being a special case as we have Scott and Dave joining us. Scott Durow being a 10-time Microsoft MVP, and Dave Milton leading our global black belt team here, which is a team of specialist technical resources. So you've probably heard or seen me talk before. We as technical specialists at Microsoft even lean on Dave's team a great deal. So really lucky to have them today. Just a quick look at some upcoming events. We do have coming up next month in June, we're booked up with Takeda talking about their adoption and RPA migration journey with Power Platform. And then after that, we'll have in July CVS coming to talk release management, changing their approvals in minutes, not days. So talking about their quick time to value they were able to get to. And then I've also got a link here for, if you missed it, last week we had our developer conference, our Microsoft Build. You can see most of, not quite all, but most of the sessions on demand on the link there, including at least one that I know Scott was presenting on that I was catching up on. Finally, we've got the Power Platform Conference not too far away. It'll sneak up on us here, so it's end of October this year. You can register using that link. If you have not talked to your specialist about securing passes, Microsoft sometimes can help out with that. So please do reach out. And again, to tease a little bit more Scott content here, he's got a couple of sessions scheduled for that as well, including a workshop. So with that, we have, like I said, a really exciting low code for pro devs topic today. So one of the big kind of challenges we face with Power Platform is evangelizing this as a tool, not just for citizen development, not just for low code, but as a way for your classic or professional developers to move faster, to do more with less, and hopefully spend more time deploying things to production. And we've got a really awesome team here. I'll let them introduce themselves. After the fact, we'll get this recording up on YouTube for folks to catch up on. And with that, I will let Scott and Dave take the floor.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Scott, for that intro. So, Dave, you named this session. It's great to be speaking with my awesome colleague Dave, and he came up with a session title and just sprung up. We thought we'd do a little bit of improv maybe and just make it up as we go along. But the race to the top of the stack, it kind of has for me images of like the scene in Rocky, where he's kind of running up the stairs and just victorious at the back. But perhaps Dave, you would like to introduce our session.
Is that your way of saying, like, what were you thinking? Can you explain yourself?
Maybe.
I love adding urgency to my presentations and talk. I think race and the imagery involved in a race is that there's consequences to the race. Like there's stakes to this, and for developers, and we'll get into a little bit of what I think is at stake for this, but I believe, and hopefully at the end of the session you'll agree too, like the developers who ultimately make it to this top of the stack are going to have a much better vantage point for what their impact is to any organization, and ultimately are going to be able to communicate their value a lot better across their organization. So more to come on that. So hopefully it makes more sense at the end than it does at the beginning, but we'll see if we get there or not.
Yeah, and I think sense of urgency is an interesting one, isn't it? Because everything is changing so quickly right now. The world is shifted so greatly with the AI revolution, and also more recently the agenic revolution. And so I was at Build last week, and so we're going to cover briefly what you might have missed at Build if you weren't there, or you might want to go back, and as Scott was saying earlier, you can catch up on some of the amazing sessions. And then we're just going to talk about, well, what exactly is this race? What exactly are we looking at here, and what is the shift in the industry? And then I'm going to do a demo, and very much we're going to be concentrating today on the pro dev story. So Build was a developer conference. It's Microsoft's premier developer conference, and so there was an awful lot of people there that were working in Azure, that are hardcore developers. And so what we're going to be talking about today is how does Power Platform position alongside a conference like that? Because one of the things at Build, what I loved, is that the keynote, rather than typically what it would be, okay, these are the things that have happened in Azure and the rest of the Microsoft tech stack, and then here is what's happening in Power Platform. What was different this year is that it was a joined up story, and it was all part of this agenic revolution. Have you caught up, Dave, with the keynote?
The keynote, yes. Although I think you mentioned, hey, did you go to Build? Did you watch Build? I couldn't even watch, probably a third of the sessions real time. There's too many. We do have a list at the end that you can go catch. But yeah, in particular, and I know this wasn't necessarily like the big keynote, right? But this one in particular, I think was really neat. We'll get into some of the things that Ryan showed there. But the overall keynote, absolutely. I think it, hopefully for folks who saw it, showed how different the world is. And I would love, and I had it on my little list of like, hey, I would love to go back just 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and compare what we were talking about on stage and what was important and kind of making the world turn back then versus what you see this year, because it's a stark difference.
Absolutely. And I was there on the front row, literally on the front row.
How early did you have to get there to get that seat?
Yeah, very early. I had a number of coffees before I got there, but it was worth it, because being on the front row for those keynotes, day one and day two, was certainly worth it. And so, I thought quickly, if I could just sort of give my highlights, the things that I really thought were noteworthy for me as a Power Platform pro dev. And so GitHub Copilot was front and center, and actually Satya was demonstrating how you can use GitHub Copilot not just simply as an agent that's going to help you code, but actually you collaborate. So the Copilot Studio agent was actually creating pull requests and checking in code and making actually responding to incidents and rolling back deployments. So it was a real marked difference to perhaps our normal way we would use AI in previous days.
You had that as agent. I feel like it was like an intern almost, or like a delegate. Like it was actually just doing
Yes.
work. Like some people think, agent's going to assist me. Like that was incredible to just see like, hey, you know what? You take this one.
Exactly. That's right. And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
They were assigning all of the sort of really what you might call chores, right? We've all done that, checks and stuff, and they say it's a chore. I had to go and do the to-do list, and I had to just update this documentation or add this test, and they just assigned all these chores over to the GitHub Copilot, and it just did them, and then they went and reviewed, and then checked them in. But it is part of that overall story about the agenic web, and so agents are not only helping us build things, but they're also helping us in our day-to-day life. And so there is NL web, which is a revolution in terms of thinking about it's like HTML really for the AI agenic web revolution. So it's a standard that's enabling websites to actually expose agents in a way which is standard and easy to implement. And so in this world, there was another announcement that Microsoft Entra actually has this agent ID now, so that you can actually see in Entra the security roles, the group membership of all of your employees, all your staff, all of your users, alongside the agents. Because in the world where agents are working alongside real people, then obviously it's important to have a homogenized way of looking at what they have access to. And Copilot Studio was front and center, and this is what I love about the fact that Azure AI Foundry integration is just a joined up story now. So you can bring in your own models into Copilot Studio from Azure AI Foundry. It's a very, very much a seamless integration. And MCP, Model Context Protocol servers, is a big topic. Everyone's talking about them, and in their native now. So the Power Platform has got an MCP server that enables agents to communicate with Dataverse, Dynamics 365. Even Windows is getting an MCP server to allow
Minesweeper, even, right?
agents.
The Minesweeper finally is going to get MCP supports. Be great.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Everyone needs that in their life. And A2A communication, so that being brought into Copilot Studio, allowing agents to talk to other agents. And this really does start to go beyond that simply procedural call out to external data. You start to get this composable architecture of agents where you, as it turns out, if you give agents a specialist set of capabilities rather than being a generalist, it works a lot better when you can then have specialist agents working with other specialist agents. And so this is really what we're seeing, and we're going to be looking at how that is impacting how we work in Power Platform. And so I'm a model-driven apps guy. I have worked with model-driven apps right back into the early days when it was Microsoft CRM. Dave, would you say you're a model-driven apps guy?
I am. Tried and
You
true.
are?
Way back in the day. It's funny how many people introduce themselves by what version of dynamic CRM they started with, but I'm not going to do that. But it was
it's like a humble brag, It's like,
that's right. Yeah.
But it's really lovely to see how the fact that, as it turns out, a metadata-driven, a hugely rich metadata-driven environment as model-driven apps works so well alongside agents, because the agents not only can actually work with the user interface, they can also work with all the metadata about that data and actually make a lot better decisions on what you want to do. And the big one of the things that I really found really quite exciting was an announcement around generative pages in model-driven apps. So this is a little teaser. So you can actually describe what you want to do, and then the agent will go away and build it inside TypeScript. And so you can see the agent here creating a load of TypeScript, and then it will not only generate the TypeScript as you might do in VS Code or Bubble or Cursor or whatever, but actually then it will go and run it. And so you can actually see it working and interact with it. But also, not only generative pages, and I'm going to show you a demo of that in a minute, also bring your own code or code apps in Power Apps, so whereby you can have any IDE that you want, and then you can create a website using React or whatever, and then you can have it running locally, and then you can add connectors to that, and then you can run that locally, and it will actually run it inside Power Apps. So you get all the benefits of the security features, and then you can edit it locally. So you can see here that I'm just going into a TSS React page and making a change, and I save that, and it reflects it inside Power Apps. So that's a little teaser. You'll see that working later on.
Yeah, I feel like you gave everybody like a bite of dessert before they ate their vegetables. So like I'm gonna have to be. I'm the vegetable guy. This is great. I love being this in this session. But I did want to pause before you get into that good stuff and address a little bit of just like why you're here, like why you might be watching this video as a developer. And one thing about what I do at Microsoft, I do get to talk to a lot of our executives at our customers. And so part of it might be my fault. We talk to a lot of customers, particularly leaders, and we talk about like AI first organizations, like what's happening in the market today. There are a lot of companies that didn't exist 12 months ago and have the benefit of starting fresh. These companies are coming into the world and they are operating with a completely different scale than we've seen before. Companies like, I think Cursor is a great example of this. Where like, I don't know how many employees are up to now. I feel like it was like 200 or something, and their valuation was somewhere in the billions of dollars. Incredible orders of magnitude. Even companies like Microsoft were looking over our shoulder at these AI first organizations, thinking like, wow. they can really, really start from scratch and do incredible things. And so for the mainstream players in every single industry, we used to talk about, and I used to talk about, even last year, 2 years ago, talk to executives about, hey, how can you use Microsoft products, for instance, to help drive an uplift in productivity of 10%? And that 10% number would be something that even some folks would look at and cross around, like, I don't know, like, you're talking nonsense. And the reality is these AI first companies, they're not satisfied with a 10% uplift. Like, they are looking for orders of magnitude difference. 10x is where we want to go. And so we're looking at a new world now where we need to be able to provide, and whether you're a developer, whether you're a chief operating officer, everybody across every industry is kind of racing to figure out, like, how do I get to 10x? How can I be that much more productive? How can I provide 10x more value to the organization? So you've got that pressure, people, in these AI native organizations putting pressure in the market. The other piece, though, is that analysts are out there looking at the market. They're also putting pressure on all of us by, publishing papers that talk about this, where, look, the AI powered enterprise in the future, yeah, they're going to build software, but they're going to build it on app gen platforms. They're going to use strategies to help them get orders of magnitude more productivity. So we've got pressure from analysts, you've got pressure from the AI native organizations in your industry, and then, of course, just the leaders in the technology world. Like, that, I've got a quote from Mark Zuckerberg that talks about how, like, okay, well, AI is not going to eliminate jobs, it'll change them. Developers are going to transition from writing code to overseeing AI systems and solving problems at a broader level. And I start to think about this, and I was a developer. Maybe I call myself a recovering developer now. As somebody who did struggle to communicate my impact and my contribution, because ultimately the contribution wasn't really in the lines of code; it was in the problems that I could solve, and could I communicate to leadership, to my management, to everyone in the company, what that outcome really was. We're addressing it in market with a lot of different products, and likely everyone watching this, if you're a developer, you've heard of GitHub Copilot, and this is something where we've said, okay, look, we agree that really the act of writing code isn't the true value of what a developer brings. We did a survey. I think these numbers are probably maybe a year old now by this point, so maybe they're even more substantial now. A lot of code's getting written by AI. Everyone in the developer community is generally going to agree that they're faster using GitHub Copilot. But I like the last number here to kind of drill in on that. 75% of developers are saying that they feel more focused on satisfying work, which I think is a great endorsement of the GitHub Copilot as a product. But as a statement around developer value and maybe just satisfaction, I look at this and say, like, I think developers agree that the act of writing code isn't actually the satisfying part. It's coming to the solution, right? And providing something of value out into the world that people are going to benefit from. Now, that said, we've got these great tools. We're trying to help people be more productive, achieve the kind of the 10x productivity boost. But even using tools like GitHub Copilot, we are saying that, yes, coders, native or novice coders in particular, are just inherently trusting what comes out of the tools. From a vulnerability perspective, there's something kind of left to be desired here. So we need to be a little bit careful. So when I said, like, hey, race to the top of the stack, or race to 10x productivity, we need to have a little bit of a plan, a little bit of a strategy here, because we can make mistakes if we go too fast, right? And so we need to balance, like, how do I get 10x productivity without necessarily creating more problems than I'm solving at the same time? And as a developer, I'll just kind of go quickly through some of the thought process I had when I struggled with keeping up across the board of all the different skill sets that I needed to be able to provide value inside of an organization. I tend to liken it to like building a character at the beginning of an RPG. And of course, we got Fallout here. Microsoft owns the Bethesda Studios, and so we can use these properties freely, I assume. I didn't ask marketing, Scott. I assume you're good with it.
Yeah, we're good.
But like the idea that you build these characters, at the beginning of these games, and just actually, I mean, it is like real life. Like we we get a certain number of points. There's only so much energy and time that you can put towards your different characteristics. And so maybe you start in Fallout with 21 points. Very quickly, you try to build out a nice mix of what you think your priorities would be. And while I'd love to be 9s across the board, more realistically, you're going to have to make some compromises. And so no, you got to distribute these points across your different categories. Yeah, agility, not so much. This isn't, by the way, based on me personally, of course. This is just a character. No, don't read anything into these. But
You've
in the
got
developer
so much
world,
more charisma than 6. I'd
that's
say
right.
much
That's
more
what
charisma.
Exactly. I think I get more than 21 points, but that's okay. But in the developer world, like I think this applies too to like anything where you only have a finite amount of time and energy to apply to things. So like in the developer world, a lot more than just 7 things that you got to spread yourself across. But if you're a true, like, say, full stack developer these days, yeah, how well do you know AI, APIs integration, databases, web, mobile, name the other 10 or 12 things you got to worry about? Very, very hard, right, to be anything above a 3 in one of these. Or maybe you can go deep in one and surface level in the others. Those people are really fun at parties. Or maybe you're a generalist that is a 3 across the board, but you can't really get very deep. But this is where I think when you race up the stack, every level up the stack you go, and I think Power Platform is one of the top levels in the stack, you really do get a bonus across the board for these things because you're building on top of a platform that's going to allow you to focus more on the functional domain, the problem that you're trying to solve, and worry less in some cases about having to be a level 9 expert, in any given particular field. And so I think the world of coding and like developers looking at themselves as coders, I think that is dying. I think we need to look at developers as composers who can take these pieces and parts and assemble them, right? And use your technical skill set, not as a specific language that I'm going to know super deep, but how do I solve problems at scale? And it lines up really well, I think, with the messaging that we're giving to a lot of customers around what does the future of organizations look like? Like in this case, yeah, we're saying that, AI transformation is going to start with some humans into the assistant. Let's say, like, for instance, Microsoft 365 Copilot, eventually leading some agents, but ultimately the North Star is that we're going to see work led by agents and humans setting direction. So these AI first companies, they're really going to be looking at the combination of Copilot plus series of agents, as their blueprint for how they're going to operate. And what we're going to really just kind of tweak here in this slide is that we don't necessarily just want you to use Copilot on agents to go and build things in a traditional way from the ground up. We can apply the same blueprint on top of a highly functional and capable platform, the Power Platform, to help those agents get the same benefit and the same head start that humans get in the low-code world, but have that team, that army of agents, start building from that head start. And so that's what really I think Scott's going to be showing today in these demos is how do we take this blueprint in the modern world, try to apply it to get a 10x boost in productivity and outcomes across the board, but do it in a way that's scalable, secure, manageable, governable, and ultimately allows way more people to participate in the creation of value across organizations. So Scott, can you go ahead and just demonstrate?
I've been counting the number of times you said agent, Dave.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I lost count. Actually, it got more than my fingers.
I'm impressed you were listening anyway. So I mean, you know what? +1, Scott. Okay.
But yeah, agents everywhere, right? We're talking about agents, and I love the fact that when you introduce that platform to enable agents to work within, I love the fact that when you're saying that it's manageable, secured, you've got built-in security by default, you've got those guardrails, governable, observable, deployable, all of those great assets that we have of Power Platform that we've been working on for years and years and years because we want to create a safe space for us to work as developers because we make mistakes. So therefore, we don't want to kind of do stuff just right on bare metal. We want to work in an environment that got those guardrails, those best practices already for us. And as a software developer, that's nothing about losing control. That's just giving me the ability to accelerate building in a safe enterprise way. And as it turns out, that's the perfect environment to enable agents to do the same, because we make mistakes, agents make mistakes. It's just one of those things. So what I'm going to show you now, and kind of pivot a little bit, is into how those agents work alongside us inside Power Platform. We talked about GitHub Copilot, and Dave was saying, how the amazing statistics that from surveys of actually how it transforms people's day-to-day work. Well, these agents that are working inside Power Platform, you can see here, we've got the requirements agent, the process agent, data agent, solution agent. They're all trained in very specialist skills to work alongside GitHub Copilot that's trained in writing code. These are trained in writing very specialist skills to work in that Power Platform environment. But what is so transformative, I think, from the announcements of Bill is that Power Platform loves code. Doesn't matter what kind of code it is. It can be low code, it can be TypeScript, it can be C#. It is a platform now that really does embrace a coding environment so that you shouldn't be limited by which technology you choose. You still can benefit from those same advantages, that the safe space. So there are three things that I'd like to kind of talk about. One is generative pages, which I gave you a little teaser at the beginning. So this is where we can vibe code, right? I don't know if you've probably heard of the term vibe coding. Everyone
is the coffee cup the official emoji for vibe coding? Is that? I just wanted to. Okay.
I'm making that the official code.
Okay.
It's
Good.
like,
all right, you heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. My code is powered by coffee mostly anyway. So really just like the natural evolution of that. But the idea is that you forget about code. You don't need to understand code. You vibe it. You talk to the AI assistant, the agent, to actually tell it what you want to do, and then tell it what changes you want to make. And often what I find is I end up sort of having a kind of a passive aggressive argument with the agent about actually what I want to do. But the idea is that you can create these pages in model-driven apps that are React based, vibe coded, and then it has full access to Dataverse. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. And then we've got code apps, and these are intent for business apps, internal business apps, where you can use VS Code or your IDE of choice. You've got full control over your code. So it's not necessarily vibe coding. You can vibe code if you want to with VS Code, inside VS Code with GitHub Copilot agent mode. But if you wanted to, you could just run it all by hand or tweak it and edit the code and how you see. But then you have access to all of that goodness of the Power Platform, enterprise grade authentication, the connectors, simplified CI/CD. And so you don't have the housing of model-driven apps. It just deploys an entire app into Power Apps. And then the third type of code that's been introduced is bring your own code in Power Pages. So this is for external websites where, again, you can use VS Code, full control of your app. You create React apps, whatever you want to, and then you can deploy that into Power Pages, and then it can use the Power Pages managed web API. You've still got enterprise-grade authentication, CI/CD, etc. So these kind of three things. Firstly, I'm going to show you generative pages. Now, bear in mind, this is literally, the paint is not yet dry on this stuff. So, and I thought we'd have a bit of fun, right? We just give it a go, and if it works,
this is where we
AI.
need the fast talking pharmaceutical ad warnings at the bottom, like make.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, your house may be at risk if you do not keep up repayments. Yeah. So what we have here, and you might have seen this already because this has been in preview for a while, and this is actually already available in production environments, but we also have preview features in here as well. So I'm going to select preview features, but I'm just going to paste in a little prompt here, which I've already written. But you can kind of write your own here just using natural language. You can even upload more details. So for example, you could upload a form, the PDF form, or even a sketch of an ERD or a process or whatever you wanted to. And that's going to be given to the LLM. And so what I'm asking it to do here is build a simple event management system with the following features. So, we're PowerHug here. So we might want a system to actually manage speakers and the various different scheduling of those different events. And so we've described exactly what you want to do here. And it doesn't need to be super detailed at this stage, but, a little bit of information. So I've said here, I'm giving a status is possible, accepted, or rejected. So let's see what it comes out with. So as soon as it's up and running, what you'll see at the top here is our agents. And so, what's initially we're going to start using is the requirements agent, because I've given it some requirements. And this is lovely for workshops. I've seen this work so well in workshops where you can actually use your requirement agent that's highly skilled in actually coming up with requirements in the business domain and actually iterate around it. So you can see here, this is our business problem here. And it's given us the purpose of this plan. And then it started to identify the different personas. So here we've got user stories for the speaker. So submit a session proposal, event organizer. As a user, I need to review submitted sessions, etc. And I can say, well, this is great, or I can actually edit it. Now, as Dave was saying, we've got Copilot, right? So you can see here that we've got Copilot inside this. So the requirement agent has given us the starter, but we can then use Copilot to actually describe some additions and changes. But if we wanted to, we could actually just simply go and add them in manually. But I'm just going to accept it. And then the next thing it does is it moves on to use the data agent. So the data agent is an agent that's trained in how to create database tables inside Dataverse. So it's suggested speaker, session, proposal, etc. But what I can do here is I can just select show details, and this takes us into like an ERD. And so now what we've got is we've got the ability to use Copilot over here to sort of like iterate further based on what the agent has given us. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm not really sure what schedule is there, so I'm just going to remove that. But then we've got the ability to say, okay, well, let's get rid of email notification. Not sure what that is, but session proposal, that's good. And then session review. So there's a one-to-many relationship. It's created here to say, well, okay, I'll allow different people to put different comments on there. What else has it got? So, okay, I noticed it hasn't got like a table for events. So I'm going to say, well, actually, add a table for events. And so there we go. Copilot's now going to work with that data agent to go and say, right, okay, go and add me a table. And then the data agent knows how to do that. So you can see it's created me an event table. And so if we come over here and it's created, great. It's created a relationship between session proposal and event, which is awesome. And what's awesome is if I go and view data, not only is it giving us suggestions, it's also giving us some sample data to kind of get us off and running, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to just say, well, let's accept that. So let's go back. Actually, let's just save that. And then go back to our
but
plan.
I gotta say, Scott, like looking at these agents, like, okay, I feel the worst for the requirements agent. Like he's got the worst job to have to document everything, but does it without complaining. And then the data agent, it's like, wow, it's all of the capability of a DBA without any of the snarkiness or passive aggressiveness. Like I think, all upside here.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we do need to introduce a sort of an alternative where you can have like a dial in the amount of passive aggressive DBA kind of.
I miss it a little bit. Yeah.
So what we've now moved on to is the technology section. So if we just take a look quickly at this, what it's shown us now is it's giving us the different processes. So it's saying here speaker submission, and it's saying, okay, look. There is a app that we're going to use for speaker submission, but there's going to be a flow here. It's suggested as well for notifications, and this particular process is using these two different tables. But not only is it giving us the description of it, what's also cool is I can actually go and delve into this and actually examine exactly what this process is. And so I can actually go and say, right, well, okay, evaluate proposal. I can go and add some different branches in here. Let's go to a different one. So session management. If I say view process here, more sessions to set schedule, see it's created like a branch here, and I can just go and add in a different task. And then if I go and want to go and add in an additional decision or a new event, I can do this, and I can even use Copilot to actually help us do that as well. So we're creating this like process map here of our solution, and then once I've done that, I can actually get it to evaluate it and check that there's any consistencies. So that's all good. And then what we can do now is we can actually look at the technology and say, well, what is it that it's suggesting here? So we've got speaker submission app, session review app. Well, okay, you maybe want to merge those. I might want to add in a website. I might want to add in an agent. And so you've got all the ability to then go and create these if I want to. I can create the tables. I can create the apps. So just to kind of expedite this demo a little bit, I'm just going to flip over. I mean, obviously, ideally, I'd like to show you it doing it all the way through, but you'll just have to trust me that I clicked on create tables and it created the tables inside Dataverse. And so you can see here what's happened now is it's lit up these in green to say these actually exist. Because up until that point, I was just vibing it, right? I was just talking to the AI and just kind of working through it. It's like a workshop with sticky notes on the wall. But once I'm happy with it, that's when I can create those tables. And then also I can create the app as well. So I've created this app as well. Here we're also suggesting that there's an agent here and a flow. And I think if we come over here, there we go, speaker submission portal. So this is the website, which would be in Power Pages. But if we go into this app and we look at actually what this looks like, I can go and say, right, I'm going to see a model-driven app here. So I'm going to see all of the things that I would normally see in a model-driven app. So it's created me here's the sample data. If I go into events here, we can see we've got the different events. But maybe I wanted to extend the user interface of model-driven apps. Now, traditionally, what you'd have to do is you'd have to use something like custom pages where you're using Power FX and the Canvas type page layout driven interface. Or if I wanted to, I could create PCF controls using TypeScript. So that's all been possible today. But what we're introducing now is this ability to say, describe a page. And this is where we get to vibe, right? So I'm going to come in here, and this is the cool thing. So it's now saying, like, describe what we want to do. Now, I can say, like, okay, I want a Kanban style board of, and if I type in / it's now giving me the ability to select out of tables. So we're actually not only describing in natural language. This is what I was meaning about model-driven apps being the perfect environment for agents to work, because you've got all the metadata. So I'm going to say, well, this is going to be with columns, and I'm just going to pop in some additional things here. So I'm saying that it's with columns for each of the statuses and let the user drag between the statuses. So I want the ability to kind of evaluate and rank the order. So this is pretty complicated stuff. I've got to have rankings and sorting of the different columns. I need to be able to insert them in different positions. And I can you can see here that we've got the session because that's attached because that's the metadata about the session. I could add in multiple tables if I wanted to, or I could go and add in additional data that I wanted to reference, but I'm just going to go and generate. And as soon as it does this, now this code agent is actually working out what we want to do from that requirements, and it's now working out how it's going to go and build it, and it gives you the whole thought process. And so you can see here it's tell us exactly what it's going to do, the thoughts. I can expand that out, and as soon as it's doing it, it's actually building us the code. So this is the kind of thing that you might have previously done in VS Code, right? But we've now got not only the ability to generate the TypeScript here, but we're actually going to be able to preview it and actually publish it directly into our model-driven app here. So it's almost like we can go into this vibe coding environment without the need to even crack out any kind of compiler or any deployment. So okay.
Well, this is great though, Scott, because you could do this in the room with your stakeholders, right? Because that's what struck me about this demo the first time is like try vibe coding in some other environment, in front of people as you fumble through this stuff. But here, yeah, you needed 30 seconds to tap dance, and then out the other side, we've got something that's almost working. I assume we're going to get more into that.
This is where it starts to get fun, right? Because this is where you see, I can kind of grab them, but I can't seem to sort of drag and drop them. So, I can say, fix the issue where I can't drag and drop the items. So I'm just going to fix it. Okay. It's almost like someone that's just delivered me some code, and I can now be the customer. This is the tables have turned, and now we don't we don't get these things coming into us as officious little bugs. We can just look at it and test it ourselves, and then tell the agent to go and do it for us. So it's going to go off, and it gives us the reasoning here and tells us what we want to do. But let's just kind of, while it's doing that, how about we just go over and look at something I built earlier whilst it's finishing up. So I'm going to go into that that same app. So I'm going to go into plans. So I open up my event management system here, and if I go over to the app and edit that app again, I've already built like a Kanban, and I'll show you in the left hand side because it gives you the reasoning. It remembers all the reasoning, so you can come back into it at any time. And then you can see exactly what you wanted to do, and you can then go and further develop it. So I'm going to look at pages. So here is my session eval, and I'm just going to select that. And so it loads it up. So I did very much similar. So if you scroll to the top here, you can see this is the initial prompt I did, and I kind of went through it like, there's more 3 items here, and it's not working, and the lane's full. But it gives me the ability to actually do that. And so if I just run this app, you can see when it's actually running inside model-driven apps, because I literally just publish it in exactly the same way as I would do in any other way. So if I come over here, eval, so there we go. We can, if I just zoom out a bit, we can drag and it updates it, and all the data access layer is all handled for us, all of that kind of stuff. So to do this inside a Canvas app, we're taking, you need PCF and things like that. But I did also, and I couldn't really resist not doing this. You could also vibe code games if you wanted to. So obviously that's not a particularly business scenario, but it does demonstrate that you have got the ability to do some pretty advanced things using this whole agent that can write code for you. But of course, one of the challenges with this is that you are stuck with the environment that gives you, the libraries that it gives you. So, you couldn't, for example, so here's my asteroids game. So I just create like a classic arcade game. So there we go, start game, and I can use the cursor keys and fire. This is pretty
don't
cool.
Die right away. Careful.
Yeah,
this would be really
This is a let's
embarrassing.
play. You didn't realize that this was going to be a let's play video, and you're just going to watch me play asteroids for the rest of it.
Now, Scott, if you could bind the asteroids to a Dataverse table, so every time you blow one up, it updates data. That's beautiful, right?
I could do that. If I had like a high score table, I could just say, right, store the high score in this table, and I would mention the table I want to use, and then it would go and do it. So the data access layer is built in. But of course, if I wanted to use like a library that was very specific to, like, I don't want to use 3JS or something, or because there are libraries that are not available inside this environment. It only gives us React, obviously. It gives us Material UI, Fluent, D3 as well for graph visualizations. There's a number of different libraries it comes with, which is the sort of the useful, it's like a Swiss Army knife of libraries, right, that it can call on. But if I wanted to do something that's much, much more specific to a set of libraries that I want to do, but I still want to benefit from all of that goodness of security and data access, etc., that's where I can come in and start to do it completely from scratch, if you like, inside your IDE. Now I'm using VS Code here, and I've got my trusty GitHub Copilot that's very good at writing code. But we can now, there is an SDK called the Power SDK that allows us to actually write code inside VS Code with Copilot, but also then interact with Power Apps to access connectors. And then we can then deploy it into Power Apps, and so that it runs inside that sandbox. So I'm going to type in, so I've got here pack code init. And what this is doing is using the Power Apps, the Power Platform CLI. And I'm just going to, let's call this Hello World Power Hug, like that. And what this does is it connects to the environment that I have connected my Power Apps CLI to, and it registers a new application. And then what it's going to do is it's going to create a config file. So you can see here, it's created this power config file, which is then giving us the app ID. And then it is giving us all the other metadata about that. So now Power Apps knows about my application. So if I wanted to, now I can just say I can say an npm run dev like that. And what this should do is it should now start my local host. So it's going to instantiate it's going to build the React app, and it's going to start that local host. So you can see here, it's over on my other screen. There it's running Vite, and then it's also, there we go. It's now saying connected to Power Apps. So if I take that particular URL there and just open this up, what this is doing, this is crazy. Now what it's doing is it's hosting my local host, my app running locally. It's hosting in Power Apps, so I've got access to all the Power Apps authentication goodness and connectors, and it runs it inside my browser. So if I, just to kind of show what's going on here, if I pop that over here and I go over to my source and I open up my app TSX and come down here, let's just put this up there. So you can see here, there we go, and Power Hug like that. So if I'm just going to
make the screen a little smaller on VS Code. I feel like we can see too much, Scott.
A little bit, smaller, or a bit bigger. Which one do you want? So Power Hug, there you see, it's now refreshed it. So I'm actually getting like live reloading of, even though it's in Power Apps. If you look at the URL here, it's running in Power Apps. It's actually live reloading it from my local machine. And this is where it starts to get really cool, because what I can do now is I can actually connect to data. So if I go over into my Power Apps environment here, I've got a SQL connector here. And this SQL connector is linking through to an Azure SQL, and I've got some stored procedures in there for project management. Those stores project management tasks and projects and all of those kind of things. And if I wanted to create an app that was connecting into SQL Server, I could use any other connectors of all of the 1400, whatever, how many connectors there are, that I can add those in as well. But if I wanted to connect to SQL Server, I can say pack connector connection list. And what this does is now it shows all the connections that I have access to, and it's going to give me the ID. So that's the ID, and it's also giving me the actual name of this, which is shared SQL, and the ID. So those are the two things I need. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run a pack command here. So I'm going to run pack code, add data source, and I need to give it the name of the connector and then also the ID of that connector, and then just a little bit of additional information about the SQL server that it's connecting to. And then this is a store procedure. So this is a get all project store procedure. So if I run this, this now will be interesting to see what happens. So what should do now is this is where the Power SDK is kicking in. So it's now adding code to my project here to enable me to connect to SQL Server using all of that authentication best practices, enterprise grade, security by default mechanisms of Power Platform. It queries the data set, it queries all the metadata, and it creates me some early bound types, some strong types that I can use inside my code. Now, when I'm using GitHub Copilot, in the same way as agents that are running inside model-driven apps, metadata is hugely important. Well, the same thing happens here, is that when you are coding and using AI to create apps, metadata is hugely important. So if I open up my services here, you've got here, get all project services. And so you can see what it's doing is it's calling this get Power SDK instance, and it's running execute async, and it's returning, and it's passing in all the different parameters. And these parameters are automatically being discovered from that stored procedure. And it's responding this get all projects response. So there's the metadata already, firstly. If we go over to models and look here, you can see here, we've now got all the metadata. So we've got the table, that result set that it's returning, all the different data types that it's automatically discovered from SQL Server. So this is like code gen. This is like code gen with all of that other goodness of Power Platform. You can tell I'm kind of excited by it. But now what we can do is we can then ask GitHub Copilot to sort of vibe. So I could say, well, okay, make a call to get all project service and show the results in a Fluent 9 table. Now, yeah, let's just see what happens, shall we? Because just bearing in mind, this is just a Vite app here that it just very basic React. So what it's going to need to do here is GitHub Copilot's going to have to say, okay, I'm going to have to go and look at my code and work out what to do. But I'm only in ask mode here. So it's just like recommending the things to do. Actually, what I need to do is move it over into agent mode. Agent mode is where the really cool stuff happens.
I feel like we need more of an animation. Like you turn on agent mode, and it should be like in your car when you put it in sport mode and like everything turns red, you know, in the gauge cluster, right? I think
that's
we're
right.
missing
When it starts
something
playing
there.
some really like some sound effects where you've actually got a really meaty engine. It sounds like you're just driving a Ford Fiesta, but it sounds like you're driving a Porsche. But it's so it's actually saying now, right, not only is it looking at my code and telling me what to do, but it's actually asking me now to go and install Fluent. It's telling me to install the React icons and the React components for Fluent, because I asked it to use a Fluent 9 table. So it's going downloading that from NuGet. And then after it's doing that, not only is it doing it, but look, it's spinning. It's actually waiting for this to happen. And it will look at what that response comes back. And if something went wrong, you know, like maybe my internet connectivity went down, or perhaps it got the wrong library, it would go, oh, sorry, when something went wrong, let's try this instead. And I've seen this happen. It will correct itself. It will self-mend. It won't assume that it's going to work. I mean, when I'm coding, I always assume that I've done something wrong. So I'm always expecting something to go wrong. And
hey, Scott. So we said earlier that 75% of developers who use GitHub Copilot feel more focused on satisfying work. Can I just poll real quick? Are you one of the 3 out of 4 developers who now feels more satisfied?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Right.
I'm not an outlier. Yes, I am. Right. I'm 100%. Yeah, it feels like you're more productive. It feels like you're actually empowered. And of course, this isn't vibe coding, right? Because I've told it to use Fluent, right? I know what I'm doing here. I know that I need to use certain libraries. I know how to program in React. Whereas with the generative pages, you don't really need to know about React. I mean, it kind of helps. You know, you might want to look at the code that it's generated and then go, oh, I can see what the problem is because it's not working, and then give it instructions. But here I'm actually having this is a collaboration. This is GitHub Copilot working alongside me and working alongside Power Platform with the Power SDK. Because now what the GitHub Copilot is doing is it's actually looking, you can see there it's saying, okay, I'm now going to create a component that calls the get all project service, and it knows the types that the Power SDK has given it. And so it knows how to call that. It knows how to get it. It doesn't need to worry about security, because remember that statistic about the fact that people feel more confident, but actually AI generated code can be like up to 40%, less secure. So it can be kind of, if you're doing this from the ground up, it could do unpredictable things that maybe expose your data. Whereas here, we know that the security guardrails of Power Platform and like data loss prevention, etc. So there it's done it, right? So starting the development server. So who knows what's going to happen now?
Well, but Scott, you said something interesting there about who knows what it's going to do. The great thing here is it's not really all that deterministic in terms of what choices it's going to make for like security or like the foundation for the connectors. Like you're building on a platform that's already made those decisions, right? Like, so there's some structure that it's operating on top of, which means that every time you build a project like this, we know it's going to use the DLP policies from Power Platform. We know there's a lot more knowns, in that equation than just, we're going to figure it out as we go. So I feel like you've got a lot more deterministic piece of this outcome figured out already for you. And that's what ultimately makes this scale. Like you can do this 10 times over because it's not going to invent 10 different ways of doing a security access layer, a data access layer, all of these other things. You've already got that coming from Power Platform, and you're just doing the top piece of it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, let's just, I've just refreshed this here. So let's see what happens. So theoretically, this should actually have code now to call that connector and render it in a Fluent. Now, if it doesn't, something doesn't work, that's when I start to go back to Copilot. And actually, sometimes you can say, well, actually, this is the error I'm getting in my console. You can open up, the inspector here and go to the console, and you can say, oh, something didn't kind of work. Like what exactly is happening? And in this particular case, if I go back to my just open up here again, this is literally just landed. So
the problem is you're vibe coding without coffee. I feel like we established earlier, like you had to have coffee to vibe code, and like we skipped that step. So I mean, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, clearly, yeah. But if we go back into the code, what we can look at is we can see that it'll have created some components here, project table, and you can see here we've got some issues that it might need to fix. We might need to go and ask it to do this, to fix this. But you can see here it's got formats in currency, getting badge status, get pro, a load of different things, and it's calling the get all project store procedure, and then it's kind of doing some, asking if it's successful. So there's probably some issues that we need to fix there. But what I can do is I can show you an example of actually what this would have looked like. So this is, and actually I didn't really do very much more to get this app working. What I did is I just added in the get all projects like we just looked at, but I also added in a couple more store procedures for adding and deleting and modifying. So you can see I also asked it to do adding in some filters as well. So you can see here that it's got filters, and I can ask it to kind of expand and collapse the tables. And, I can say add new project, and I added some validation in there as well. So, it probably took me about 20 minutes to get to this stage. But all of the connections, all the security is all handled by Power Platform. This is hosted in Power Platform. There's no credentials to SQL Server that are stored locally. Those are all securely in Power Platform secure environment. Also, then from a deployment standpoint, we can then obviously move all of this code over using well-defined ALM.
Yeah, but I mean, this strikes me because, and it goes back to maybe some PTSD I have around these like build versus buy debates. That you've probably been in the middle of them for years and years. We're like, yeah, we can build whatever the heck you want with enough money and time and effort. We can build anything that you need. It could be kind of expensive, could be kind of slow to do this. Or the other choice was always just like go buy something, and then you're kind of locked in creatively. You might not have all the options that you need. But I feel like this is kind of splitting the difference. Like you can have exactly what you want functionality wise, but on top of a fully managed platform that covers you, so like you don't have to worry about that, 40% of your code being or having vulnerabilities or other issues. Like you get the best of both. And I feel like I don't want to say the first time, but I think this is the best illustration of being able to give you the best of both worlds finally on Power Platform.
Exactly. Best of both worlds. I think that summarizes it up. And we've had a bit of that before with being able to create, deploy React PCFs to model-driven, Canvas, Power Pages. We've had a degree of that best of both worlds, but this really just takes it to that next level to sort of like truly having, you can use whatever you want to. So generative pages, there is a preview coming soon, so watch out for that. There is a public preview coming for bring your own code to Power Pages as well. So that's very, very similar, where you use an IDE and then you do exactly the same thing, except for you use upload code site rather than pack code push, which is the verb for deploying those code apps. And then what I just was showing, the code apps in Power Platform, you can sign up for a preview here. If you take that QR code. We'll put Scott will put some links into the notes on this about this session, so you'll be able to kind of sign up for that as well.
Oh yeah, one other thing, Scott. When is the preview for Asteroids on Power Apps?
Well, yes, it's a very selective private preview. So
All right.
just hit me up on LinkedIn. Maybe I'll let you.
Okay. Yeah. Just want to cover down on that. Yeah, and then I mean, yeah, if you missed it, I mean, tons of sessions that went on at Build. So if these things are interesting, you'll actually get. I mean, some of these sessions here, you'll see just based on the icons, you know, what products were featured here. But the full list of Power Platform specific sessions across Build across 4 days. I still haven't gotten through all of these, but a lot of what Scott showed today, you'll get an even deeper dive on those features throughout the collection of sessions here.
And I'm
you know,
going to go on and now, and you know, I'm not going to leave it. I'm going to go on and I'm going to have do some serious vibing with Copilot Agent to get what I just demoed working. You know, I'm going to have some stern words with it, and just make sure that it doesn't do that for me again. And you know, I'm sure it'll take notice.
we'll get there. But you know, yeah, I snuck this in at the end. I mean, this is something like from a personal journey. I think a lot of people maybe who are newer to Power Platform as professional software developers might experience this. That I just wanted to tell you, you know, it is normal when you're experimenting with new technology to kind of go through, well, in this case, like an analogous feeling to the stage of the grief, where you know you might get frustrated or depressed, you know, depending on really the ability for you to do what you used to be able to do on this platform. Hopefully what you've seen today is like, absolutely, there are incredible ways to create value on Power Platform. It may be a little bit different from what you're used to, but more and more we're making it just like what you're accustomed to in everyday life. But I put this out here just to say, hey, seeing is believing. Getting your hands on is really, really important. Get in there, experiment. You know, build your version of Asteroids or the Kanban board. You know, I guess whatever your business requirements look like. But get hands on because it'll mean a ton. And if you haven't already checked it out, and if you had the opportunity to go, the Power Platform Conference in October is a fantastic way to connect with probably the most passionate community in the technology world today. I've not seen any other community come close to the I'd say like the excitement, the energy, the passion that I see in this community. So it'll energize you as well. Would love to see you in Vegas this October.
Thank you both so very much. I'll get my screen shared out real quickly here and we'll bring it to a wrap. I will say, as you're catching up on your build sessions, if you haven't ever cranked up Ryan Cunningham to 1.5 or 2x speed, it's quite a party. Really appreciate you both. We'll be here next June 26th, fourth Thursday, back to our regular schedule. We'll have Takeda with us talking about their journey, one of our larger Power Platform users in HLS, who's also done some with Power Automate Desktop and RPA. You can find these sessions on YouTube at Power Hug link, as well as joining our group on LinkedIn. Thank you all for your time, and thanks again to Dave and Scott for joining us this week.
Thanks for having us.